welcome to Saturday Night at the Movies, the podcast that celebrates classic, cult, and current films and the people that made them, and many other aspects of pop culture. I'm your host, Steve Rubin. Our producer is Ben Shrewsbury, and our signature theme was composed by Greg Lerhoff. Here it's always Saturday night, and our mission is to chronicle film and pop cultural history one memory at a time. Tonight, we welcome a true titan in the motion picture public relations business who spent over 40 years as Steven Spielberg's key PR advisor and a senior executive at Amblin Entertainment. He's also the first publicist in film history to receive an honorary Academy Award for his tremendous contribution to the field. Welcome, Marvin Levy.
Hi. Thanks for that introduction, Steve.
Good to see you,
That's
Marvin.
almost as much as I could ever think of taking.
Well,
Thanks for all the nice words.
Well, it's easy to write nice words about you, Marvin, because I think you have a terrific reputation in the business as being one of the original nice guys who we all love. And of course, I worked with your son, Don, going back to 1978 at Maslansky Konigsberg, way back in the day. I want to ask you about the early years. When you were growing up in New York, were you a movie-going family? Did you like to go to the movies?
Oh, every weekend. Absolutely.
Do you remember
Sometimes,
Yeah.
I was going to say, it was when you went to the movies, it was a double header. They'd show two movies when I was a kid.
Now,
Can
do
you
you
imagine?
remember a specific theater that was the theater you would go to? Do you remember?
Well, yeah, obviously Radio City Music Hall,
Right.
and then the Roxy, which was not far from the Radio City Music Hall. But they were the two biggest show places.
Now, if you
Then,
yeah, go ahead.
and then the various companies had their own. I mean, Lowe's had a whole bunch of them. RKO had a bunch of them. So I would have within maybe 3 to 6 blocks from just so many theaters that I had a big choice of what I want to go and see.
Do you remember what one of your first memorable movie experiences was? Do you remember a specific film that sticks out in your mind that just blew you away?
It's hard to pull that out. I don't know.
I know
That's where my memory bank
it's funny in watching
away from me.
In watching The Fabelmans, Steven references the Cecil B. DeMille movie, The Greatest Show on Earth, as being seminal to the lead character's fun. Personally, the only thing I remember from seeing movies is I remember seeing the original South Pacific with Ray Walston in a life preserver floating in the Pacific while they're bombing this island. But now, we'll talk about public relations work. Now, for me personally, because I also became a publicist, I knew nothing about the PR world, absolutely. It was like somebody told me that I was going to go exploring on the moon. I didn't know what PR was. Did you study any form of PR in school?
No. So at that time, it had to be in high school and then college to even have a chance of doing something like this.
How about writing? Because I know how important writing is to a PR man.
Oh, extremely. And it was important in, at PS6 and at DeWitt Clinton and just before college, and then college. So I had a lot of people teaching me.
What college did you attend?
NYU but it was the smaller NYU, and it was either like the Bronx or the Upper West Side, because the two were like right together. And that's what it was. I had a huge choice of where to go, and it just felt right to me at NYU. The only thing they didn't have a football team.
Or a campus, really.
Yeah, yeah. Then you go to a college and they don't have a football team.
So
Well, that's what it was.
did you go to NYU with a plan? Did you know what you wanted to do, or were you just taking courses?
Uh, I pretty much wanted uh, to to take certain courses so I could do what I thought I could do well for myself.
And what did you think you could do well?
Uh, write, writing something that could be interesting and entertaining. And
So
I think I did.
when you got out of college, what was well, I would assume that during college you had some jobs that kind of brought you closer to where you wanted to be, or did you have to wait till after university?
Uh, pretty much after. I mean, I did some small stuff early, and then I had to wait a while.
So what was your first break when you got out of college? What were you doing?
Pretty much the same, but just doing it better. I can't remember actually what
Well, I
the
think I
first
read
one or two might have been.
I think I read you worked for a show. You did some trivia questions for a show. Did you
Yeah, that was, yeah. Uh,
tell us a little bit about that?
yeah, that was one of the game shows at the time. And I'd be darned if I can remember the name of it.
Was it $64,000 question?
No,
No.
way before that. Don was asking, was it the $64,000 question? No,
Did you write a question where the first contestant got the answer too quickly?
oh, yeah, if you got it, it was good for both of us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
But not the network, because they had to pay, right?
yeah, that was yeah, I think it was other network at that time.
Okay, I'm going to pull up some interesting information here. It says, let's see. You became the publisher of the first Tex McCrary and Jinx Falkenberg talk shows.
Right.
How do you become a publisher of a talk show? What does that mean?
Well, somebody had to be the one that each time there was, and it would be like weekly. And I was the key guy to get the material for it.
And was this on the radio?
Started on the radio and then later went into a little bit. I didn't get too much into the TV part.
Right. Now, I read that you got a recommendation to work at MGM in New York. I assume that was in the 1950s. I'm going to pull up an image which I think Don was telling me about, that you worked on a musical called Gigi.
Oh yeah, that was, to this day, is one of my favorite uh, films.
And won the Best Picture that year. I believe that was 1958.
Yeah,
It was a big deal for Leslie Caron, who, of course, everyone had fallen in love with from the Gene Kelly movie, An American in Paris.
right.
So you're working in New York. Do you remember who you were working for?
Uh,
Well, it usually was MGM.
and yeah, and I was at MGM, and I was at Columbia, and occasionally there was some that were done for 20th Century Fox.
So you did mention that you were working for the Blauwitz, but this is later though. The Blauwitz company comes later because that's in
Yeah, Canton,
62.
yeah, Blowitz, Canton, and Thomas.
Right, right, back in 62. But before that, you worked at MGM. So did you actually go into an office at MGM to work on these publicity campaigns?
Yeah,
Got it, got it. And did you get a chance to use some of your writing skill? Were you writing
oh,
some press
sure.
copy?
Yeah, yeah, and I learned a lot of uh, from Howard Strickland.
Well, Howard
And
Strickland was the head of Howard Strickland was the head of publicity. Was he at MGM or Fox?
I think he was at
MGM.
MGM.
MGM. Okay, so you reported to Howard Strickland.
A
Now,
really good guy. I've
got it.
been lucky all the way through. I've landed with the best people.
Right. Well,
You go from like a Howard Strickland, and you wind up ultimately with a Steven Spielberg. That's pretty good.
since you love the movie so much, did you get a chance to meet Leslie Caron and Louis Jardin and Maurice Chevalier? Did you meet them?
Uh, yeah, I think I did.
Well, that was a huge hit that year, and I'm sure that kept you busy. Now, the following year, William Wyler brings over a little movie called Ben-Hur,
Yeah,
which blew out all the stops, was a back-to-back, again, a Best Picture winner. I think we all went nuts for this movie. It was one of the first roadshow movies I ever saw.
yeah.
What are your memories of Ben-Hur, Marvin? What do you remember?
Well, yeah, that's very high on my list of great films. And when you had people like Charlton Heston, he was terrific. He was better in those movies than he was years and years later. He was never as good as that. And also as a friend.
He was I mean of course everyone remembers him 3 years earlier as Moses in the Ten Commandments.
Yeah,
And of course had worked previously for Cecil B. DeMille on The Greatest Show on Earth, which was also a Best Picture winner. Working for MGM on a movie like Ben-Hur, I assume is the top of the food chain. It doesn't get any bigger than that, correct?
that's correct.
Got it. Got it. It's interesting today, newspapers are barely floating. Everybody gets their news electronically, whether it's on TV or in the internet. But back then, newspapers were king, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
now, do you remember what your specific responsibility was on Ben-Hur? Did you have a certain thing you had to do? What were your specific duties? Do you remember?
Well, just really being one of the people who were key to the other people and to put them all together. So I was fortunate to be in that and to have a very nice relationship with everybody, starting with Heston. Later on, he became not the same kind of friendly guy. Just happens, you know?
Yeah, no, he became a little more political, which unfortunately it kind of
Yeah,
switched suits a little bit. The other actor in the movie who played the bad guy, Stephen Boyd,
yeah,
played a very good bad guy, and I'm sure in real life he was probably a very nice guy, as bad guys turn out to be. But
yeah, he
as
was.
Masala, he
Yeah,
just turned on the heat. Did you like working with Stephen Boyd?
yeah, sure.
Good, good, very good. So you're working for MGM, as I mentioned, the top of the food chain, and you list another one in your credits being this little movie. You're working on very small movies. This one is called Lawrence of Arabia. Now
Yeah, you bet.
that's Columbia Pictures. How did you go from MGM to Columbia? How did that happen?
Because that's the way the business was at that time. You could go from one to another.
You just say you could go from one to another?
Yeah, I mean, it just worked out that way. There may be some reason. I can't think exactly what it was
Was
to
that
do
Lawrence,
it.
Thomas, and Canton?
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned that.
Yeah, but was that with Lawrence of Arabia?
Oh,
So
was
you
that
went from this.
Yeah, must have been.
So you went from the studio to work at an agency. Now, were you
Yeah, very good.
when you worked for Blowitz, were you still living in New York, or did you move out to California?
We were in New York then.
Yeah.
When did you move out to California?
74.
About 74.
Okay, 74. Got it. Got it. So one of the key questions, of course, is when you started working with Mr. Spielberg, and I believe it was on Close Encounters. Is that true? Was that the first film you worked with Steven on?
Yeah, that's the basic one.
Now, I know you have an interesting story of how you met Steven Spielberg. Can you remember that story?
The specific story right now?
Yeah, tell me how you met the one of the greatest directors in the history of show business.
I wish I could tell you.
Did you visit the set?
On Close Encounters, I think so. I hate to do that, but one thing I have to tell you, most people, they work anywhere around the world from 9 to 5, right?
Right.
Well, I put the two together to get 95. When you're 95, you don't remember as many things as you did when maybe 39,
True. Got you. Well, let me ask you this. What were your first impressions of Steven as a person? I gather he's he's kind of a bit shy, right?
Uh, he's good with everybody. He really is. And that's one of the things, happily. And he reminded me of it weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, that we've been at it together over 40 years, which is nice. Every single one of them perfect. Yeah, he's amazing.
So is it safe to say that in the entire 40 years, you've never had an argument with Steven Spielberg?
Yes, I had 3 times where I screwed something up a little, but he never made a big thing about it. And happily, I couldn't even remember exactly what it was, but I know there was 3 times. It's sort of like Lincoln, blinking, and nod. I don't
Public relations is a terrific pursuit for many reasons. The thing I always liked about being a publicist is you get to meet everybody. You're not stuck in an office, just looking at a computer screen or a typewriter. You get to go out on film sets, you go to junkets, you meet people all the time. What was it about the field that you really loved? Was that kind of fair about what you liked about it?
Oh, sure. I mean, the opportunity to see it be, you feel like you're in the cast too. In that way of being with these people, most of whom you idolized in the first place.
Right. Excuse me, I'm getting my water. Sorry.
No, that's enjoy it as much as you want.
No, absolutely. Well, I'm going to put up some other films, and you tell me if you remember something interesting about these pictures. Now, interestingly, after he made Close Encounters, Steven made a crazy comedy called 1941. Did you
Yeah,
did you actually work on that movie as well, Marvin? Do you remember?
yeah, that was part of it. Yeah,
1941 is to me one of the great underrated comedies. It's madcap. It has a little touch of it's a mad world.
yeah, very
And
close to that kind of thing.
right. And you got and talk about casts. I mean, you got a chance to work with Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi.
Yeah.
All these. In fact, Lorraine Gary is in it. Sid Sheinberg's wife, and I actually had her on my show last year.
Oh,
And she told me, I asked her, I first talked to her about Jaws. Of course, she worked on Jaws, and
yeah,
how how wonderful her relationship was on camera with Roy Scheider, who played the police chief.
yeah.
And she told me that they didn't get along at all. That he didn't like her, and I thought that was amazing. Talk about actors doing their jobs, but she's very funny as as the wife in 1941. Do you have any memories of 1941? The craziness of it?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those terrific movies that's fun from the time it opens and you have the closing credits.
Did you do John Belushi sticks out obviously as a just a fun presence. Do you remember anything about John?
Not specifically. I mean, I think obviously he is what he is in the movie.
He's a legend. He's definitely a legend. Now,
Yeah.
after 1941, Stephen, and which wasn't a huge hit. I don't know why it wasn't a hit, but it wasn't a hit. But Stephen comes right back with Raiders of the Lost Ark, which to me is one of my all-time favorite movies on many
Yeah,
different
mine
levels.
too. Yeah, as I just said, mine too.
Now,
I mean,
oh yeah, okay, go. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, and from that, emanated more films. The Indiana Jones.
They continued coming. In fact, the Dial of Destiny was the last one, which was just so much fun. I find it amazing that Harrison Ford, who obviously is so iconic as Indy, was not the first choice to play Indy. That there was there was an opportunity to get Tom Selleck to play Indy. Do you remember that at all? Do you remember?
No, I don't.
Yeah, he couldn't. I think there may have been a contractual situation with his Magnum PI television series, but he couldn't get out of it. And of course, Indy is. Marvin, I know that you've worked in LA for many years. Did you ever get a chance to go to locations as as an executive in PR? Would you ever travel to locations?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Did you work on Raiders of the Lost Ark? Did you get to go to any of the locations?
I don't think I went to the locations, but I did work on the publicities for
Right, right.
where other people were as well.
No, and the movie was such a huge hit. You know, it's the only movie I've ever sat through twice. It was playing at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood, and my girlfriend and I went at the time, and she was so impressed with the movie. She said, "Can we watch it a second time?" And I guess they didn't clear out the theater, and that was long before they had reserved seats. So we literally sat there and watched it two times in a row. I've never done that before. I don't think you can do that today because obviously they have reserved seats, but it was that good. It was that good, and obviously another huge hit. Now, I wanted to mention another film that is a personal favorite, and it's actually it was. I'm going to go back a little bit. I'm going to go back to a movie called The Deep. I just watched
Oh,
it
yeah.
this week, and this obviously wasn't a Steven film. This is probably when you were working at Blauwitz. You were working on some films for Columbia Pictures.
Yeah.
I thought this was an interesting movie. It's not 100% terrific, but I thought the underwater photography was really interesting. And I would think that would have been a good publicity hook for the movie. Any memories of that?
Oh, yeah. That had great cast, with Robert Shaw. Uh, oh, I'm blanking on that.
Nick Nolte. Nick Nolte.
Jacqueline Bisset.
Yeah, Jackie Bissett
And
was great, and everyone after that.
sure, sure. No. Did you get a chance to go on the water at all when they were making that? Does that ring a bell or probably not?
Uh, I would be kind of around it, yeah, but not right in the water scenes or near the, what I mean,
Sure,
near the
sure.
water. I'd be up, waiting for them to come back from wherever they were.
Oh, okay. So were you down in the islands at that time? Did you go
Yeah,
down to the Virgin Islands?
yeah.
And would that be an opportunity to conduct a press junket? Did you bring some journalists in for that?
I believe we did. I can't absolutely say so, but I think
You
so.
did in Bermuda.
Okay.
In Bermuda, sure.
Yeah, that's
Now,
right. It's in Bermuda. Great place to be.
oh yeah, oh yeah, no, of course, and the local beauty was great. Now, I want to after Raiders, Stephen did a film that I think is a very underrated film, and I'm going to pull it up here. Let's see. Yes, Empire of the Sun.
Hmm.
Empire of the Sun, I think, is one of his best films. A lot of people don't know it today as well as some of the bigger titles, but Christian Bale was so good as that little boy
Yeah.
brought up in, and of course, Christian Bale has become such a huge actor. Do you have some memories of Christian? Do you remember him as the young boy? Was he a good boy?
Oh, sure. I mean, everybody in it was a terrific film, and one that stands to this day.
It's funny because it was released the same year as The Last Emperor, which I think stole some of its Oscar glory. I think in any other year, Empire of the Sun could have been a Best Picture, but it's a beautifully made movie. Did you travel at all on Empire of the Sun? Do you remember going over to Shanghai at all?
No, I didn't.
You didn't go to Shanghai. Okay, got it,
No.
got it. Very, very interesting movie.
Yeah, very.
What um, what was it like working at now you had left the PR agency, you kind of became exclusive to Steven. Was that your idea or Steven's idea?
Uh, Had to be Steven's idea.
So you became kind of his consigliere in the PR field. Would that be accurate?
That would be accurate.
He also seems to be one of those directors who understands what you do and actually goes out of his way to help you get your coverage, correct?
Correct. But he does that with everything he does. He's the best person you could work for that I could think of all through my life, and I'm sure so does everybody else who's had the chance, even for one movie, to remember that as something, as a highlight of their whole life.
Sure, sure. No, it's always been actors are always talking about how much of an honor it is. Now, the other movie that stands out, of course, in the war genre is Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that the hallmark of your campaign, or at least from my point of view, is that you reached out to the veteran community very strongly, didn't you?
Yes, because they needed to be respected and for people to know what they did and how they did it.
Were,
I love that film.
it's my favorite, one of my favorite films of all time. Was your family involved in World War II? Did your father serve? Did he go over, or was he too old?
He was local.
He was local.
Yeah,
He was in World War One.
yeah. No, he wasn't in World War One.
Your dad was. Yeah.
Yeah.
You think your father served in combat in World War One?
No.
No. Got it. Well, Saving Private Ryan I'll tell you one of the aspects of it that I find interesting that they talk about, and I hate to mention this producer's name. Let's just say the producer of Shakespeare in Love, who we all know who produced that movie, or at least one of the producers, conducted an Oscar campaign to guarantee that Shakespeare in Love would win Best Picture of the Year. Now, I know they spent a lot of money on the PR campaign, and then you had Saving Private Ryan also in contention to be the Best Picture of the Year that year. Any memories of how voracious that campaign was to get it the honor it deserved?
Well, we really did everything we could for Saving Private Ryan because he deserved the picture deserved it, and everybody in it.
Well, you got Steven the Best Director, that was assured. I wonder if they ever published the scorecard as to how many votes Shakespeare in Love got and how many votes Saving Private Ryan got. I'm wondering if it was pretty darn close.
No, they never do that.
I know.
And other people, like all of us, would love to know how close was it. Doesn't work that way. It's either there or it's not. But I treasure that movie.
Yes. And as you know, you were instrumental in getting me a 20th anniversary interview with Steven for the LA Times. And I got to interview everybody except for Matt Damon, who was off working, but it was just a fascinating experience for me. You'll recall that you called me and I was traveling with the family in Scotland, and you said, Steve, I'll have Mr. Spielberg for you tomorrow for 15 minutes. And I said, I'm in Scotland, I'll make it work. So of course, I ended up getting 28 minutes with Steven, which was a thrill of all thrills, and just so much fun. Publicity has changed so dramatically over the years. As we mentioned earlier, it was important in the old days to get newspaper writers to come out and review shows and give you all that advanced material. In your mind, and I know you retired last year, how in your mind has publicity, the job as a public relations specialist, how has it changed over the years, Marvin? Is there anything specific you could point to?
Yeah, well, I think it's more competitive because it has to be. And that's a big difference.
And who are you competing with?
The other people who are looking for the same things that I'm looking for.
Right.
That's what it comes down to.
Got it. But electronically, everything is electronically now. It's all internet and social media and electronic breaks. I think Entertainment Tonight and Access Hollywood are still good breaks for TV exposure.
Oh, absolutely.
But newspapers around the country have been folding left and right. And aside from the New York Times, there really isn't as much I should say, there isn't as much newspaper presence in campaigns anymore, is there?
Not as much as there was. Fortunately, there's still some.
Right. Well, it's funny. We all used to open the LA Times on a Friday, and there would be page after page of big ads for the latest movies coming out. And of course, you open the LA Times on a Friday, and by the time you get to page 3, you're out of the calendar section. It's kind of sad. It's just that things have changed. And of course, advertising has gone almost entirely electronic.
Yeah. But still, those big pages are very important, no
Sure.
matter what. I think so. Now, maybe that's old time, but I think where you really should be is always being like a New York Times or Time Magazine, where, you know, that kind of publicity.
That gives you a lot of what's the word? It kind of brands you. It gives you a branding
Yeah,
element being in those magazines.
yeah,
I find that amongst young people, they're not reading as much anymore. It's fine. I find they look at their screens, but to get them to read, like with my son who's 26, to get him to read a newspaper article is like telling him to go find an old Egyptian tablet, you know, uh,
yeah,
frustrating.
yeah. I mean, obviously, I see a lot electronically, but both I do and Carol, my wife, does. We love holding the newspaper and reading from it. It's just, you feel like you're really enjoying it, or sometimes hating it, but at least you're doing something.
True, true. Well, it's so funny because I also think that East Coasters had a great advantage over West Coasters because East Coasters spend a lot of time on trains. And when you're on a train, you
Yeah,
like to read the newspaper. Whereas in LA, obviously you can't read the newspaper if you're driving across town.
yeah, and pictures are very important to the whole process.
Now, Don had said that you came out to California in '74. What prompted you to move to California? What was the reason you wanted to come out here?
The job was moving from New York to California. So that made it. I had to either do that or you got to start over to get a job. So it was kind of shook up my family a little bit, saying, "What? You're moving to California?"
And was
Well,
that PR agency, that Blauwitz organization that brought you out?
uh, yeah, they would have been.
Sit around.
Yeah, Cimarana. Remember Cimarana? No, you weren't even
Oh
around.
no, no, I remember Cinerama, sure. Well, It's a
Yeah,
Mad World was released in Cinerama and Khartoum, and
yeah,
so you
yeah,
actually worked on some campaigns for Cinerama?
yeah,
Oh, oh,
yeah. They were widely done.
yes, yes. I'm hoping that the Cinerama Dome, which I guess has been closed for a while, will reopen, which would be
Yeah, because they showed the original Cinerama, not last year maybe.
yeah. They have film festivals there, which is exciting. Um, what was it like moving to California for you? You lived in New York most of your life, so you coming out to California. But I always find that it's easier to move west than to move east. So was it a pretty easy move for you?
Reasonably so. I think for the rest of the family, not so easily.
Ah. Did Carol give you some grief about having to leave her friends behind?
Somewhat, but then we were back and forth actually. We would get back there quite a bit,
Got it, got it.
but not like we not as many trips as we'd like,
Right, right.
but we couldn't do it then.
Big change.
Where were your offices when you moved
Well,
out to
we could walk everywhere.
when you moved out to California?
Yeah.
Where in LA were your offices? Were they in Hollywood?
Uh,
That's the end.
yeah. I
La
think-
Cienega?
Yeah, in La Cienega,
Got it, got it.
one of those theaters.
Of all the movies that you worked on as a publicist, either for Steven, for anybody else, would you say Saving Private Ryan was your favorite, or do you have another favorite?
Well, the two would be Jaws and Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, I didn't realize you worked on Jaws.
A little bit.
You worked a little bit on Jaws. Was that as big a challenge as well? The physical production of Jaws was supposedly very difficult for Steven because they had problems with the shark. Although you watch the movie today and you don't see any of those problems.
Yeah.
But from the PR point of view, was it pretty straight ahead? I mean, anything problematic on Jaws that you remember?
No, not on that, because I knew that area of the country a lot because I lived in New York, but we'd be out by the ocean. I would know it, see it.
That movie had I think it was their ad campaign. Was their ad campaigns around the phrase? Oh no, I think it was for maybe Jaws 2. It was just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. I think that might have been
Oh,
the
yeah.
for 2, but Steven wasn't involved in Jaws 2, probably for good reason. Uh, what a great movie. It's funny because I recently sat down and I read the Peter Benchley book that
Hmm.
the movie's based on. And actually, what surprised me about the book is it's much more soapy than the movie. It's about this love triangle between Helen and her husband Brody, the chief, and the Hooper character, which obviously they completely changed in writing the screenplay. I thought that was interesting. Um,
Yeah, they weren't going to take any chances to screw it up, you know.
right, right. They were smart about that. All right, let me pull up another shot here, which of course is you and your Carol and Mr. Spielberg. Um, oh, you know what? We haven't talked about another film which is important, and I apologize. We have to talk about Schindler's List.
Oh, yeah,
And we
and
have, I mean, Schindler's List is probably the most important film that Steven has ever done in terms of the impact it had on its audience. Um, I want to say a devastating film in so many ways. What were your challenges as a publicist on this kind of movie? Do you remember?
I think just well, two things, the historic part of it, and then to make it like doubling that, it was so important for people to know what really happened back there. That here we are, we don't have a war in our face every minute. And it's just great movie making.
Did you go
Along with,
over? Did you go over to Poland?
yes, yeah, I was there for some of it, not the whole thing,
Right.
but was there. It was really interesting. And we went to the, uh, what they call, yeah, what am I thinking?
You're
The
talking about
gap.
Yeah, in the individual cabins that they had that were like strung together cabins.
Oh, the barracks in like Dachau.
Yeah,
I mean Auschwitz.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we went to really look through it, and you do, and there's an arch as you get close to there, and it's in German, but it's like ox something.
Oh yeah, that's the famous Auschwitz entrance. Something along the lines in German. It says, be happy with your work or something like that, or the work will free you or something like that.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but it's such a powerful film. And what's interesting for you guys as a company, while you're promoting Schindler's List, you're also promoting Jurassic Park. Two movies could not be more dissimilar in terms of audience, etc.
Yeah. That's what's so remarkable with Stephen. I mean, just to have those. I know fairly recently I looked up how close were these to being together. How much air was between Schindler and Jurassic. And you see, it's pretty much.
Well, I read that Steven went off to do Schindler and Jurassic was in post, and George Lucas stepped up, and George Lucas helped him do the post, I guess, and they kept the continuity going with the help of George.
Oh, that's right. A little bit on that. I almost forgot that.
Right.
That's what friends do.
That's what friends do, exactly. And both, of course, were very big hit movies. And Jurassic Park, like Indiana Jones, spawned so many sequels, and just is just such a remarkable film in itself.
So enjoyable. I mean,
So
like every day you couldn't wait to get to the set. You know, what are they doing today? And it was always just entertaining. That's entertainment.
Isn't that the truth? It is truth. So,
Yeah.
You decided to finally retire.
Yeah, I had at least one more thing I wanted to tell you about.
Oh, tell me,
Was
please.
when we were in a hurricane during Jurassic Park.
Oh, in Hawaii?
Yeah, yeah, and I could see every single person in our. Uh, we had one, I don't know, 60 people working on it, and we went into one of the big uh, indoors,
Stages?
and I could still see us all around, spending the night in that spot.
Oh, so you didn't get it. You
You
couldn't go
got
to
everybody like that.
you couldn't go to the hotel room. You had to camp out in the stage.
Yeah,
Oh, was
yeah,
that bad? It was
yeah,
that bad.
yeah. To
Wow.
be sure, they wanted to be sure, and they had to do it. So that's what they did, and I could see it. Oh, we're down on on the floor.
Oh, wow. Wow. How was the catering?
They were very good about that, amazingly enough, but they did, and they fed everybody well, and
Wow. That's
we all got through it. But
You know what? It's funny. I'm sitting here in front of the ET logo, the Amblin logo, and we haven't really mentioned ET. And I assume that you worked on ET as well.
oh, sure,
I mean, another huge blockbuster, and so much fun. So you've definitely, if you had to mention the films that you've worked on over the years, it's one blockbuster after another. Did you work on any bombs?
I'm sure I did, but they were very few.
Very few. That you had
Yeah, really.
in baseball terminology, I think you've had a terrific batting average, Marvin. I think sticking with Amblin, most of the time you have hits, with a good percentage. Well, this has been very enjoyable. Thank you for taking the time with us to talk about your career and the great movies you've been involved with. And I wish you a comfortable and a relaxing retirement.
And I just send you my very best. for many, many, many more years for you.
Thank you, Marvin.
And, just thanks for even asking me to do this.
Well, having you on is a pleasure and an honor. We've been
Well,
listening to Saturday Night at the Movies. I'm your host, Steve Rubin. Our producer's Ben Shrewsbury. If you are watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. It's free. There aren't a lot of free things in the world. We're free. And if you want to leave a nice comment, we appreciate it. Marvin, thank you so much.
yeah, well, you've met at my own SNL.